and I've seen you on YouTube
guys.
a few times.
Bojana is telling me that we are live now.
We're live now.
I will make some small introduction. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast number 3. Let's talk about Agile. And today's topic is about leadership. And before we start, I want to introduce my guest this morning, the afternoon. Yeah, this afternoon. Our dear friends and Agile coaches, Miljan and Olaf. Hi, guys. How you feel?
Hey, guys. Good.
Really good.
Nice to see you both.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Excited to start.
Before we start, I want to say that the goal of this podcast is to go to different roles in the organization and to see why leadership is not reserved only for some roles, but for every person in a company that wants to step in and lead. Let's start from the team's perspective. Agile states that the team needs to be self-managing and cross-functional. What does that mean from the leadership perspective?
Olaf, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I had somebody in a course yesterday who was saying that agile leadership is actually a thing of the organization and not of a human being. So it's not that we have one leader who has agile leadership, but we have leadership in an organization that is distributed and it's showing up in different places. And it's agile in that way that it's flexible and adaptive. And I like that a lot. I do think that this whole area of self-managed teams, high-performance teams, agile management, agile leadership, I think we treat that with too much black and white thinking. Too much agile here, something else there, management here, leadership there, teams there, management there. Whereas today's organization need a lot more attention in the gray area in between. So yes, we have managers and they're responsible for something. Yes, we have teams and we want to grow their responsibility, but we should more focus on the nuances, on having conversations with the teams. What can you take responsibility for? What do you need to take responsibility for? What do you want to take responsibility for? And then have negotiations with the different leaders, the different managers, and separate out the different kinds of leadership. I heard about an organization recently where a team has a value role, process role, a facilitation role, and I don't remember. There was a fourth leadership role. So they have 4 kinds of leaders and they're responsible for different things. And I like that a lot because one thing that never works well, or almost never works well, is have one leader responsible for lots of different things they can't all be an expert in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe just to add to all of what you're saying, and maybe I'll use a sports analogy in this case. If you think about like sports, right? And I played soccer pretty much all my life. Football here in the United States. I came here when I was 13 and a half, so I pretty much grew up here. But sports is a great analogy, right? Like when you think about any game, but like specifically soccer, it's who wants to step in and help us win the game, right? You might have a captain, right? But like anybody who wants to step into that leadership role, and Olaf, what you're saying in a sense, like, hey, I can lead maybe by playing better defense, or maybe motivating another team member, or player. So I think a lot of times people confuse that leadership is given. Mm-hmm. And it's not given. It's actually something that you choose to given the circumstances and situation. You step into that role, right? If you want to. Nobody can force you to be a leader.
Yeah. And I love the football and soccer analogy because I always use that as well to tell people how the way we interpret roles and responsibilities traditionally in organizations differs from how we interpret roles and responsibilities in teams. And in a team, yes, I have a goalkeeper, but I will not punish the goalkeeper for running and scoring a goal. And I will not keep if the ball is coming towards our goal, I will not point to the goalkeeper and say, hey, it's your job to catch it if I can, right? We all feel responsible for keeping the ball out of our goal, and we all feel responsible for getting the ball into the other goal. And this is not something that we wait for the right experts to be available. and
exactly,
we're working together. It's not about individual contributions. In the end, it's about winning the game as a team.
Exactly,
or losing
it's
as a team.
It's not like Olaf, you scored 2 goals, and I have 1 assist, and maybe we're good. Nobody else did anything, and on the scorecard, individual scorecard, it might look good, but it's a team sport. But maybe, this is maybe what we can explore a little bit here is the context of how our organizational structure and how, for instance, if we're incentivized, if the management or the owners are saying, hey, I'm going to incentivize you based on how many goals you score, Olaf, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then guess what? When it comes to scoring goals and getting your, couple of extra $1 million in your bonus versus doing the right thing.
Yeah, and then I'm not being a good team player anymore because then I'm playing for my incentive and not for the team.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and this is important in terms of organizational structure, how we incentivize people, how we set goals, how we hold individuals accountable versus creating conditions where teams can take responsibility together.
And how we create these conditions because. Here, for example, in Puzzle Software, we are developing software products. And I noticed that, for example, when we are talking about team, the developers tend to focus only on technology and functionality and don't have good understanding of business goals and value delivery. And what about that? How to communicate to the team that, okay, the technology is very important, how the microservices, for example, is doing, and how do we using the databases and, I don't know, Angular or C#, and they are talking only about that, for example. They are not talking about the business value or the value for the client that we are delivering to them. How to switch the development team to think about not only about technology, to think about the value they are delivering, and to take the responsibility for that, to take leadership in some of them.
Yeah,
pay them more. No, give them more money.
I'm sure that's enough. For me, a switch from being technology focused and just focusing on how do I build this, to becoming a developer that was interested in this business stuff was to actually be exposed to a customer and to actually be in the conversation and learn that for the customer who was paying, it mattered a lot more that I was building the right things than that I built them in a way that was nice or great or elegant or whatever. Obviously, they wanted a system that was scalable and maintainable and all of these things, but mainly they wanted a system that does a certain job for them. And me understanding that job and me having this satisfaction that I kind of see the happy customer with my software.
Yes.
That made the click for me.
Yeah. I would also say, a lot of times, first of all, what I'm seeing now, at least here in the United States, I don't know, Olaf, what you're seeing in Germany and other places, but I would say this was the case probably for people that graduated, back 5 years ago. But what I'm seeing now, and there's a shift. It's interesting because I teach at the university, and I work with a lot of kids today that are getting out of school. They think about themselves as problem solvers for the customers and business. So they actually don't have all the baggage. They haven't been conditioned to think about just technology. They're thinking about what problems am I solving?
That's the right mindset. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say it right or wrong, right? In a sense, it's just, it's a right mindset when we talk about complexity and trying to figure out how we're going to solve the problems. The issue is a lot of times where developers just leave me alone. I want to code without fully understanding the business. And then the issue goes the other way too. The business has no freaking clue what the IT is doing. So another thing that I'm seeing is there's more people that understand the technology playing the product ownership role and going on the business side. So I think it's on both ends. I guess what I'm saying, it's not just on one.
And how to shift that? How to shift the thinking about technology only to shift thinking about technology and what value that technology is giving to the customer, for example. Is that a recipe for that?
I think the general recipe for changes like that is always go in small steps. So similar to what I said before about leadership and teams and agile and not agile and all of these black and white things. I don't think that people shift from here to there. Maybe shift is even the wrong word, right? It's a gradual change and it's a gradual learning. So as somebody who's responsible for an organization with developers, Marko, how can you create a space that is conducive for these developers to learn this? So how can you get them in front of a customer? How can you get them into conversations? One thing that I've seen work in past experience is that developers working in service for a couple of hours or a couple of days, actually reading the service requests written by the people who are using the software and who are struggling with the user interface, with the usability and stuff like that, actually facing the bugs and then fixing a bug, fixing a glitch in the UI, and then getting the response from the person saying, "Oh, hey, thank you, you saved my life. Now I can do my job better." I think when you expose your developers to this kind of experience, that can be quite addictive. They might like it.
And
great.
Also, maybe just to add to that, like I would say, like it also starts with that person, right? I recently wrote about it, but like it first starts with acceptance, right? The person, let's just say the developer, needs to accept and realize that, hey, I'm not just a developer. I need to look at things holistically, and that's where it starts. So like you can't force anybody, even if you push people and you tell them like you have to look, start thinking from a holistic perspective, from a customer perspective. That's not it really starts happening maybe through coaching or some type of reflection that a developer says, yes, even though this might be intimidating, something that I don't like, to actually go and talk to the customer, to understand the customer, to empathize with the customer and the user. Because a lot of times customers and users are different. So I think that's the first step.
Yeah, great advice. But in what ways does organizational culture influence the leadership at the team level? Can we change the organizational culture to influence the leadership in the team? Can we put the culture on that way that the team wants to take the leadership role in some way?
What is that thing? What is that thing like? Turn it to 11. It's like you know what I'm talking about. I don't know which movie it comes in, but like XP, like with the XP, turn it to 11.
XP turn it to 11, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like people think you can change the culture like by just turning it on, and I personally think culture, you don't change the culture. Culture is like a shadow, right? It's a reflection of your behaviors. It's a reflection of the mindset of people. It's a reflection of organizational structure. So you don't really change the culture, and so at least the way that I think of it, it's more of how do you change the organizational structure? How do you change the behaviors? How do you help people evolve the way that they look at things? As a result of that, your culture will change. But Olaf has a different thought.
It's not opposing. It's a bit different. I do agree with what you said, and culture is shaped by every single thing we do. Especially when you are like Marko, you are the boss of an organization. So everything you do creates, shapes, and potentially changes the culture or keeps it from changing. So when you look at what do I pay attention to every day? So what are the things that when at the end of the day you think, was this a good day or was this a bad day? What are the things you pay attention to? I bet you people know that better than you do.
Yeah.
Because they are serving your attention. They are doing what you value because they want to keep their jobs and they want to make you happy. Yeah. So when you start thinking about, okay, what do I actually focus on during the day? What do I talk about? What questions do I ask? What things do I want to see? How do I support my teams, etc.? I think you are changing or you are influencing the culture all the time. And for instance, if there's something in your culture that you don't like and you want it to be different, think about what do you need to do tomorrow to make it a different culture. And that you might find that it's surprisingly easy to change something because you're the boss and you have a lot of freedom in terms of how you can show up, and other people will align. Like it's like leading in a dance where you have very, very strong arms and you know all the steps, and the other people, the other person is just forced to follow because they have no other they have no other option.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, my wife is texting me. She's like, "You're too loud." I had both of my earpieces on and with a noise cancellation, so I'll try with one and make sure that I'm not yelling. But I don't know how it was coming across to you guys. But
okay, seems okay here, but I don't know how the live stream
they can
works.
probably adjust it, but I'll
okay. I have one question about team. One more question. Is stepping into leadership role connected with knowing the domain and your job? I noticed that, for example, when the people know their domain, for example, developer or tester or business analyst, the senior roles are willing to take the leadership role because they are sure what they are doing all the time. Is that connected with the knowledge of the domain? Is it connected to wish to take the leadership?
I mean, I think
or not?
Maybe just to build off what Olaf said, like there's different type of leadership, right? It's easy. I think it's a lot of times I tell people to practice self-awareness. Right. It's easy to jump in a domain that you know and dominate it. Right. But like, for instance, if you're a tester or developer, right, and you see a junior developer not doing something or you want to help them out, it's easy to say, let me show you, let me do it. Right. It's a lot harder to coach them through that and to take that, almost coach as a leader role rather as a mentor as a leader role, right? So it's situational, and I think Olaf alluded to it earlier. To answer your question more precisely, I think it helps, but it's not necessary, and it actually can be almost like Achilles heel that's your only go-to, like this SME or subject matter expert kind of type of leadership is the only leadership that you know about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus one on that. There was a funny article in the Harvard Business Review recently about Apple, which is, as we all know, one of the least successful companies on the planet. And they have this policies, you could say, of advancing the most senior expert into leadership positions, which is a strike contrast to what every bit of agile advice, agile organizational development.
You know what that's called? Look it up, guys. So for those of you that are listening, look it up. It's called Peter Principle. Principle.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the thing that was interesting about that article, the way it works at Apple makes sense. But they have created a system around it where they educate people who are senior experts, and they actually make them greater and greater experts and better leaders. And this is in most organizations with this Peter Principle, right? We just assume that the best architect is going to overnight turn magically into a great people leader because now he's being promoted and he's responsible for, 30 developers. And then overnight, all of his colleagues are suddenly envious of him because he got the job they wanted, and he has to do something he's not good at because he used to be good at architecting software, and now he's supposed to lead people. So again, treat things gradually, like don't expect things to switch, and separate different concerns. Like maybe we need different kinds of leaders. Maybe we can have a subject matter expert who is great at developing, for instance, and we can have somebody who's great at coaching or great at leadership, and maybe they can co-lead the team or co-lead the organization. And I think this is a promising way to think about this.
Yeah. What about the Scrum Master as a part of the team? What is his role in some kind of leadership? Because he's the servant leader.
We were talking sports earlier, right? There's this winter sport called curling, where you have this stone that you have to move on the ice, and there are people with the brooms who are making the ice smoother to make it faster. The Scrum Master is responsible for making the system faster with exactly this approach, removing impediments. He's not supposed to push anyone because he doesn't have power to do that. They are not supposed to tell anyone what to do or how to do their work, but they're supposed to spot anything in the system that slows it down and remove that so that the system can improve. The Scrum Master is a coach, basically, a coach who observes the system and holds up a mirror to the system and tells people, hey, this is how I see you do this. Can we think about a better way? And who is decidedly not in power so that he can't use any coercive, oppressive, or whatever other forces to get the system into something that seems to be better than before, but isn't really because it hasn't grown naturally.
Yeah, and I would say also like the Scrum Master role is totally misunderstood, especially in the Balkans, but I think everywhere else where there's low maturity or understanding like of what that servant leader role is, right? So I tell people a lot of times, like just to give you specific examples, like how can you lead product owner or serve and help the product owner? Right. You're looking at the business. You had, as a Scrum Master, you should understand how to help product owner define business value. Right. A lot of times I talk in classes, like just take a second now. How does your company and how does your product owner define business value? 90% of you listening, probably even more, would not fully understand. So the way that in that situation Scrum Master can lead is help the product owner connect the dot, first of all, understand themselves, and then help the stakeholders and also help the team understand how do we define business value. We talk about delivering business value all the time. I had one organization where Deloitte came in, and part of they have their own change management stuff, and they every time they said we have a win or we push the production, they take cowbells. And they start yanking cowbells, and the Scrum Master had no idea. Like, for instance, they were laughing. They were saying like, this is so stupid. They're paying Deloitte this much money. And if the Scrum Master understood, like, for instance, that this is part of like actually change management, and how much of change management do you understand? How can you help your organization support that rather than laugh and make fun of these other teams? So that was a perfect opportunity for Scrum Master to jump in and lead, and a lot of times, due to many different reasons, they're not able to be aware of what's going on and step into those roles, let alone to talk about like, stepping as a leader to teach or train, stepping to like help understand, like, hey, Olaf, I see we're struggling with quality. I'm sensing that, we're not willing to help each other. Like, what are some of the things that we could do? Like, or maybe I'll talk to one of my friends and say, hey, let's bring somebody to help us with pair programming or mob programming or whatever it is, right? It's situational. Yeah. But a good Scrum Master knows how to lead in different situations and not enforce things on the teams. And a lot of times I'm seeing Scrum Masters either don't know what they're doing or they're imposing things on teams.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So to wrap up, Scrum Master from one side is coaching the team and making the leadership happens in the team from the team members, and from the other side, he's coaching the product owner how to go to the market with the product, how to talk with the client, how to take the leadership of the product. But I noticed from experienced Scrum Masters that they have a third role to do with the management of the organization, the understanding of Agile, and to take the leadership role in, to teach them how to embrace the Agile way of thinking. Is that right?
Well, yeah. Olaf, what do you think? I have another analogy that I want to share, but what are your thoughts?
So all of these things are things Scrum Masters can do. I think it's very rare that a Scrum Master will be great at all of these things. So if you have an organization where there's only one Scrum Master available and they need to do all of this, then they need to learn how to influence management, how to coach the product owner, how to understand the whole business in order to understand the business value and the business models and things like that, and to help everyone on their teams. If you have more than one Scrum Master, I think it's a really good idea to have each of them figure out what they're really good at, or to hire Scrum Masters who are good at different things so that they can focus on these different areas. In general, I think that a Scrum Master should be able to increase Agile understanding, whatever that means. People talk about this Agile mindset a lot, which I'm not too fond of as a kind of conversation, but increasing the understanding of what Agile means and how each and every person in the organization can work in a more agile way or improve in a more agile way. I think that's something any Scrum Master should be able to do.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, we had a podcast about the state of Agile here in Serbia, and we have a local coaches here. Mm-hmm. And I think that Zoran said that the Scrum Master is a senior role because he has all these responsibilities and all, in this case, leadership role in front of the team, in front of the product owner and organization. But the problem is because here, I don't know what is the situation in your countries, but here in Serbia, we don't have so much senior Scrum Masters to be able to work in every organization.
So it's not, I don't think it's necessarily senior. Like, to use analogy, like with basketball, right? Think of a product owner as a GM. Everybody's familiar with the Lakers, Los Angeles Lakers. So, like, think of Bus Family as true product owners, and they can put a GM in there, like general manager, to run the organization. And that could be the product owner that they're actually trusting and putting to run the organization. And for Lakers, the goal is championships. They're not, that's their vision, that's their goal, right? The coach, like, let's just say Phil Jackson, and who brought in the triangle offense, right? Think of triangle offense as Scrum. It's a framework. It's a way of working. There are specific roles there. And the players as developers, right? So really, it's the coach and the players that are deciding, they're giving the freedom within the guardrails to say, do whatever you can. We'll work within the budget, what we can, to give you all the resources that you need to win championships, right? Phil Jackson helped them, as well as how he helped Bulls understand how they can actually use triangle offense to win championships and be that advantage to them. So think of the Scrum Master as the coach there, right? The role of the coach is to almost work themselves out of the job, and that the team understands how they can step in, how each of the players can step into that leadership role.
Yeah,
so
great.
does it have to be senior? Yes, but you could also have, depends if your company is okay with just making the playoffs, or if you want to win championships. That's that's another factor to.
Yeah, that's I think that's a good general comment to make on all of this improvement thing that we have, and high performing teams and whatnot. I think to decide as an organization how great do we need to be and how agile do we need to be, and as an organization, but also in different teams. I think that can lead to very healthy conversations and see, okay, what kind of developers do we need? What kind of Scrum Masters do we need? What kind of product owners do we need? And when you say, is it a senior role? Senior compared to what? Yeah. The Scrum Master is probably going to be senior compared to the junior developer who's just starting in their very first job after college. But I've seen Scrum Masters who were extremely young, just very motivated and very engaged and very curious. Like reading stuff, trying stuff. Every sprint, they're making up how they're leading this retrospective and how they're doing this and how they're doing this. And that kind of Scrum Master would need a team with a little bit of patience, with not like we're expecting perfect service from you, but that Scrum Master could help the team to great improvements just because they're new, just because they have a fresh mind and they're questioning everything, which is one of the key responsibilities of a Scrum Master. So I don't think they need to be senior in that sense. But if you have that very young Scrum Master and then you have a very senior manager coming in and the manager is making whatever requests of the team, that very junior Scrum Master is probably not going to be courageous enough and senior enough to stand up to the manager and say, hey, stop. You're breaking my team. So there are limits to any person's ability to do what they can do. I don't think it's generally true to say a Scrum Master needs to be senior.
Exactly. And I think there's a bigger question here, and I'll just maybe touch upon it, but it's an issue with leadership not understanding what Scrum Master role is and not fully understanding it and supporting it and buying into it. Like, if you think about how much does it cost you to have 7 people for 10 days? And let's just say it's $1,000 per person. You can go to your HR and figure out what does it cost per person per day, right? So if you have 7 people, that's $7,000. Let's just say here, at least United States, per day per team, right?
Yeah.
Multiply that by 10 days, it's $70,000 per sprint. So how much is it worth to invest in a good Scrum Master that can help everybody utilize those $70,000 every 10 days in a better way?
Yeah, that's the point. I agree.
Yeah. If the Scrum Master reduces the amount of waste in that system by 10% sustainably, then they've already earned their salary.
It's so easy to say, oh, Scrum Master only facilitates, so we'll just get one of the developers to facilitate. And there's a lot more to leading and Scrum Master role than just facilitating.
Okay, great. And what about product owner? I think the product owner role, from my experience, is very, very heavy because you have 3 sides. You need to communicate with the client. You need to communicate with your organization, the senior management, and you need to communicate with the team. And very often, those 3 roles are not in line. Your organization has one goals, but the client has the other goal. Client wants to get as much as more functionality and value with the smallest possible price, but your organization wants to have some earnings. So, but from the side of the team, you need to get the team to give you as much as more functionality that the client wants. So what is the leadership role here at the product owner side? it's very heavy to balance between the three worlds.
Especially,
right?
Especially so I think the other thing that people don't fully understand, we talk about product ownership, and most product owners don't own. Well, I was waiting for Olaf to use one of those. They don't own shit, you know. They don't really own a product, and we call them product owners, but they really don't have the authority to make any decisions. So you put people in a tough situation when you're telling them to lead, but you're not giving them any authority or any room to lead. So I think that's fundamentally challenged because we're organized by projects, not products, right? So it goes back to the structure. Or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be products, but in Scrum we call it, you're the product owner. But there are many different ways that product owners can lead, right? For instance, a lot of product owners don't even know how to help people come up with a vision and co-create. I think probably co-creation is one of the most crucial skills that product owner needs to have. You can't just say, here's the vision, Marko, or here's the vision, Olaf. I spent 2 weeks on it. I hope you appreciate all my hard work, and I I expect you to align with the vision.
Yeah. I think this is one of the top mistakes that product owners make, that they do too much work and too little facilitation and leadership. Mm-hmm. And regarding the conflicts that you mentioned, Marko, yes, being between all of those chairs, trying to create the best possible thing for all of these competing stakeholders, that can be quite taxing. I also think that we sometimes forget that the original Agile setup was supposed to be somebody who develops software, usually a team, usually some kind of supplier, and a client wanting that software, that they set this Agile way of working up as a means to co-create something together, because we're both interested in getting a better product. Mm-hmm. So the getting back into this, I want to get as much money for my software as I can, and I want to get as much software for my money as I can. If we're getting back into that fight, mm-hmm. I think we're using the wrong tool for the job if we're trying to have a product owner work well in that environment. It's a bit like having a screwdriver and trying to use the screwdriver to hammer in nails. That does somehow work, but it's just not the right tool for the job, and it puts everyone, most of the person trying to do that, under a lot of stress. So creating the contractual environment there is important, I think.
And I think you and I have talked about it, or at least we've discussed it in our community. People think that product owner needs to do all this stuff. They're accountable, but they're not necessarily responsible. So a lot of times in situations where I've been, where it works really well, is where product owner has a UX designer that works with them, that has SMEs, people helping define the what. Because there's a lot of work. And if your organization is not creating the support for the product owner and be able to lead rather than what Olaf said, do a lot of this stuff, then they're going to try to focus on what they're being asked and headless chicken, just run around rather than actually leading the team and organization. So that's another thing.
Yeah.
How are we doing with time? I think we have about 20 minutes. So I know Olaf and I can go on in this stuff. So what else do we want to talk about?
Yes, about product owner. In what ways can a product owner motivate the team to embrace the product vision and solving the business and customer problems? You remember that we talked on the beginning of this conversation about leadership in the team members. So the product vision will come from the product owner side. Am I right?
Well, we just talked about that. If we co-create the vision, if you get the customer, the team, and the people involved in the product development to co-create the vision, so that everybody has actively contributed to the vision, then I have a bigger stake to actually make it happen. So I think the what Miljan earlier said, I have prepared this this impressive vision. Here it is. Now I need to motivate you. Like that's creating the very problem that you just mentioned, Marko. So if I'm asked to deliver on somebody else's vision, I'm going to be a lot less motivated than if I'm being asked to contribute to my own vision. And so let people participate in developing these things, and then they will automatically be motivated.
Exactly. Just to give you an example, I recently worked with California DMV, right? The Department of Motor Vehicle. This is where you get your driver's license, you register your car, right? So it's a huge organization in California. $9 billion goes through annually. It's like a publicly traded company. It's a huge. So the product owner, and this is a state agency, right? The product owner started talking to the customers, right? So you have two types of customers or users, actually. You have a DMV employees that register you when you go into the office, but also once they start offering self-service where you can register yourself, then when I go to register my car, I'm the user as well. And what they started realizing is if we include the developers in these discussions early on and what the vision is, for instance, people registering their car, then if developer talks to DMV employee and then talks to the customer, and when you see somebody waiting for 4 hours in a line to register their car, and that's what happens in California. People are, in the middle of the summer, people are pissed. So when you go back as a developer and you're thinking about how can I make these people's lives easier, what is the vision here? What are we trying to do, right? And when you create it with a product owner, you're a lot more invested in that idea and that vision than if product owner didn't include you in that discussion. If you didn't go to the DMV office, if you just stayed in that basement and you were doing the work. So that's kind of the difference. And that's how product can lead, by co-creating and actually helping developers. We talk about developers should be talking to the stakeholders. How can I, as a product owner, get developers to closer to the stakeholders and the users, rather than be the roadblock between the two?
Yeah. Okay, but that's a very good advice when you have your product. But people often here in Serbia are asking me, okay, we are doing the outsourcing. Maybe, I don't know, 80% product or project development here in Serbia are outsourced projects. So in that situation, we cannot communicate on that way. You said, because the client is somewhere in the world and the development team and Scrum Master and something called the product owner is here in the Serbian office. So do you have some advice in that matter?
If I could summarize two things that people could do is improve how you communicate and collaborate. Forget about Agile, forget about what you've done. So in that specific example, like if you don't have it, and this happens a lot, and that's the case for most companies like when IT is outsourced. I would say for that product owner, this is where we have IT product owner, business product owner, right? We have a product manager all of those people need to actually figure out how do we communicate and collaborate better? How do we help the team define the what? How do we help the team understand who the customer and users are and what their needs are? So it really just comes down to that collaboration and communication between those involved that are helping the team define the what. It's not that hard.
Fewer handoffs in the process and more actual communication and collaboration.
Okay, because that's a big issue here that we are talking very much, because you have a setup that is not a product, it is a project that we are doing here from Serbia to some distant client, and the product owner is not here with us. It is in some, I don't know, US company or something like that. So we don't have a clue what is happening there. We have a communication with their product owner, but we don't have enough information for functionality for everything we are doing here. So we are often suggesting companies to have some kind, how I say, the shadow product owner here, to be able to communicate to the team, to communicate everybody in the organization, what is the value of the product, how to do things, how to help the team on this side. Am I on right way, or
it's difficult?
How to solve the situation?
The problem with this kind of role
setup
is that they do apparently solve a problem, but they're also making sure that the problem stays in the system. So if you have two stations, two organizational units, two people who don't communicate well, the best way to keep them from communicating well is to make somebody else responsible for the communication. Because now you're paying somebody for that problem to stay, right? Because you're paying them just for making this work, right? So instead of
think of it, that's a really good Olaf.
So if Marko and Miljan can't communicate, a perfect way of making it stay that way is to make Olaf responsible for your communication. Because now I'm going to make sure that your communication does never improve, because then I will be out of my job.
Exactly.
And I see that pattern in so many organizations.
It is. And to use another analogy, because, people resonate, I guess, a lot of people resonate with analogies. But if I want a house, right? And first of all, I need to decide with my wife who's going to be the product owner, me or her, right? And then if I'm hiring Olaf to do some work, right? And he's like internal, like builder, right? And then he's hiring Marko to do some other stuff, right? If Olaf continuously is, and I'm saying like, sorry guys, I don't have time. Olaf, you make the decisions on my behalf. And when you're wrong, I'll yell at you and, do whatever. So it's like we create these situations ourselves. Like if you're building a house for me, and if I'm not engaged in understanding like what I need and communicate that to you, and this is what happens. Like in organizations, you don't have people that own the products. They're too busy because of other responsibilities that they have. It's like you can't be building a house, changing things, and have 15 other things on your plate. Like it's just, you can't. I mean, you can, but you're going to run into issues the organization's running and that you see. So
you're getting the house you deserve.
You're going to get the house that you deserve. Or that you invested in. So.
And what about the trust? How to build a trust with the team, with the client, with the colleagues in organization? And
what kind of trust do you want to build? Like there's personal trust that we build because we share some history, because we know each other, we have some experience in telling each other stories about our lives and our who we are. So we have some personal trust, and then we have also professional trust, which is, I think, different. Like, do I trust you, Marko, in terms of like I'm telling you about some issue in my relationship at home? Do I trust you not to tell anyone if I tell you that? That's a different kind of trust from, do I let you develop my software? And I think we need to first figure out what exactly is missing. What exactly are people not having that they need to trust each other? So if I want to trust you to develop my software, I need some evidence that your company builds good software, et cetera, and then I'm going to give it a try. And if we're building a relationship, I might want to invest a little money in getting a little software. And if I like that, right, very similar to what Miljan said about the building a house, right? Do you trust somebody to make decisions for you? Probably not on their first day, but when we've worked together for a while and you know how I'm making decisions, then you might say, okay, Olaf, I trust you with this thing. I know how you make your decisions. Go ahead and do that. And I think we need to build this step by step. I've been in so many situations where people are calling me in and say we have no trust. And this is never true, right? Most conversations like that I've come into, people trusted each other not to kill each other, for instance. So it sounds stupid, but that's the start, right? Yeah. Start with what you have and then see, okay, what's the next thing you need? What's the next thing you want to trust and you don't currently? And what do you need to see in order for that to happen? And getting people, like if you have two people complaining about their relationship, that means they have a relationship and it's important to them, because otherwise they wouldn't be complaining about it.
And to look at it from another perspective, not just trust, but like Olaf just mentioned, we have enough trust not to kill each other, right? So on the other side, you can look at how much fear is there in organization, right? Do I fear like what Olaf is going to think if I say? Do I fear like if I say something I'm going to get fired? Do I, so like how much fear? What levels of fear? Because the levels of fear correspond probably in some extent to the levels of trust. The best way to build trust, and books have been written on it, is be vulnerable, right? There's a lot of talk in Agile about being vulnerable. What does that really mean, right? But we all know that you how do you build friendships? We all build strong relationships, and we all know how you build strong relationships. Doing what you're gonna do, doing what you said you're gonna do. Right, following through. There's many different ways. Naturally, it's ingrained in us. We know how to develop trust. It's just, are we willing to? And does the environment allow us to do that?
Yeah. And who is creating? Now we are going to the senior management, the top management. Who is creating the atmosphere in the company? The value, the mission, the vision, and what kind of leaders we need on the top level on the company. What should they communicate to the people?
I think the way you're asking the question, it sounds like you're expecting a simple answer, and I don't think there is a simple answer. What I do believe is that we need people who are able to reflect. We need people who are able to look back at the day and think, okay, what were the decisions I took? What were the indicators of change that I've seen? What were the surprises? And how did I deal with all of that? And looking back now, ideally, what should I have been doing? What might I have been doing? And to very similar to the teams, like team, we want people to inspect and adapt and get better, and we need to create a culture. And I think this needs to start from the top. It's not only there, but it's definitely most impactful for the organization if it starts from the top. If we continuously ask ourselves as bosses, if the organization I have now is not the organization I want, and the organization I want next, what leader is that organization going to need? And how can I step into becoming that leader today and tomorrow? And all that needs is reflection. And as leaders are notoriously busy and never have time for anything, I always have people in my leadership classes who have like, oh, I need to make space in my calendar for regular reflection. It's so awesome what I see in my leadership when I take time to reflect in this class. And I say, okay, let's do this now. Everyone get out their phone, put a regular 10-minute thing once per week, put that into your calendar. And there's always somebody, usually the same person, says, oh, no, I won't get a regular 10-minute thing into my calendar. That doesn't work. And then I'm like, okay, you need to start somewhere, 10 minutes per week. And getting into this reflection. And then the next step would be conversations. So if we are leading a company together, meeting every other week to talk about what are we doing, how are we leading, what's the company we want to.
Yeah, and like I think Olaf, it also goes back to the co-creation. I don't know. I mean, we do same work, right? So like when I go in an organization and I talk to C-suite, right, and then I talk to middle management, I talk to the teams. I'm the only person that's actually on a weekly basis talking to people across the organization, and you see all the BS that happens. And one of the things that happens is. Senior leaders set things, put it in a PowerPoint, and they assume that it's going to get down to the teams because they're busy. 100% of their time is spent in meetings, and there's huge disconnect what people think in the trenches versus what people think the senior leader executives. And I'm talking about like people that are driving the organization. And I think one of the things that they don't fully understand or don't have the time to is to see how they're communicating, co-creating the vision, mission that you mentioned, and aligning teams. And sometimes organizations are just too big for them to do that. And again, this points back to the structure. If you're too big, and it's going to be, communication is going to be harder, collaboration is going to be harder. So that... that structure and how you organize and govern your organization is not the most important thing, but it has a lot of influence on how people behave and what they do.
Okay. Let's wrap up this podcast. We talked about teams, we talked about Scrum Masters, we talked about product owners, we talked about very little but senior management and everybody in the organization. And we can agree that the leadership is not reserved only for certain roles. The leadership is a mindset that everybody is in organization can step to in. Mm-hmm. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an activity rather than a position. Yeah.
It's a different type of leaderships that people can do. Some leaderships.
You can think of it as the space that you can occupy, that anybody can step into that space, right? Or a hat that we share, that anybody could get a hat and put it on if they want to.
Okay. Thank you, guys. It was a great conversation. We will have more conversation on this topic. It's a very big topic, and I hope you see you in the future. Thanks everyone for watching this podcast, and see you in 2 weeks.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.